Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Lex from Men of Warrior 22. Most people look like they got it all together. They show up, they lead, they carry responsibility. But if you really pay attention, you realize people are carrying more than they actually show. And the ones people rely on the most, they're the ones usually carrying it in silence. Welcome to Men of Warrior 22. This show is for veterans, the parent, the leader, the one holding it together even when it gets heavy. We're stronger together. No one stands alone. Tonight's guest is someone who has spent a lifetime in service and leadership. Councilman John Botsford is a Navy veteran, community leader, councilman at large, and a candidate for mayor of Covington, Louisiana. Councilman, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lex. Glad to be here.
Well, before I get started into anything, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I come from a long line of military. My grandfather was in World War II, Army, and my father was in Korea, a Marine, air traffic controller, and my uncles and everything like that, they were all Marines. And I was the first Navy. And of course, coming from a bunch of Marines, that was not popular. That was definitely not popular. I got out of the Navy and I did reserve time. I did the escort missions into Kuwait, and which is kind of like a deja vu, right? One of the tankers that we were escorting into Kuwait in the Straits of Hormuz hit a mine and blew a hole inside of it. We were right next to it. It rocked us as well. And you fast forward to the what's going on today, and mines and everything like that that are going on out there, and it's kind of like reliving it all over. It's just like it's so fresh in your mind that now all of a sudden it's like the world is coming back into my life, right? So it was definitely a great experience and stuff. Being in the military. When I got out of the military, I did reserve time for a while, and during the Kuwait War and everything, which was really interesting because um, the unit I was in, they didn't have the Iraqis did not have a military, right, or a navy, let's say, and so there was no need for us to go over there, and I really wanted to go, but I was denied to go over there as along with everybody else in my unit because they didn't need us, or so they said. But after that, I got out and I worked different jobs. I went to school. Um, I worked for a marine company in San Diego. Just can't get the Navy blood out of me, being out to sea and everything. And then after all that, I started having children, and then I moved back from San Diego to Louisiana. And I always had this passion about serving, and it was about. I mean, a lot of military people can relate to this because it's like, just because you're in, 8 years, 10 years, or a lifetime, you still have that sense of like you're doing something good for everybody else, right? And it's like that sacrifice. And I always wanted to get into, politics or the community, and it came, when I was raising children, that was kind of like not an option, right? It's like, you've got baseball, you've got soccer, you've got, basketball, you've got all these other different things going on with you. And then once my children kind of got to that age where they were like in high school or whatever, I said, you know what? It's time for me to pick up that torch again and serve my community. The way I started off was I was vice president of my homeowners association, and I started going to the council meetings, and I saw that in my district at the time I was just a district councilman. There was no representation. There was nothing going on, and we had a historic 100-year flood, and we had 86-year-old people living on their porches, and because the contractors came in, took their money, and left, and there was nobody there to help them. And I said, you know what? I can help them, and I need to change this. So I ran for office and I won. the very first time. And then I actually ran a second time, ran unopposed and won again. And then I ran for councilman at large when the seat was vacated by a previous council at large, and I won that unopposed as well. And I think it was because that I have a reputation of a person that is out there in the community. I do my homework. I go out. I talk to people. Um, I am there to answer their phone calls. I actually call them back, which is kind of rare. And if they have a problem, I was like, if I don't know the answer, I was like, you know what? Let me look it up and I'll get back to you. And I call them back. And it's like, even if I have to tell them no sometimes, they're like, wow, you actually really called me back. And I was like, yeah, well, that's what I'm supposed to do, right? And it's just that sense of service and the sense of being able to get out there and help people in the community, especially people that can't help themselves, like the elderly or people that are disadvantaged. It's so rewarding.
Do you think?
That
Do you think? Do you think that the sense of serving was that always in your blood, coming from a military family, or do you feel that being in the Navy kind of brought more of that out of you?
I think it was always in my family. I looked at my father. Of course, I admired him, and like I said, he was a staff sergeant in the Marines during the Korean War. And not only that, he was involved with the civil service board for the fire department, and I saw his sense of service, and it just kind of, I really admired him for that. I was just like, wow, he's out there trying to make a difference, and I wanted to be that person too. I wanted to be that person that can go out there and just make a difference for everybody.
What led you to join the Navy and not the Marine Corps like the rest of the family members?
Well, that's actually kind of funny because the day I went down to the recruiter's office, I walked in and the Navy and the Marines had a joint office. And the Marine Corps had a guy that was a candidate that was in there. And they were yelling and screaming at him and making him do push-ups. And they were just going at it with this guy. And I'm kind of like, I've already experienced that growing up. I don't need any more of that. And the petty officer for the Navy, she was like, hey, come over here and talk to us. And I was like, oh, okay, stay away from these guys. So I went over and talked to her, and she was super helpful. And my original thing, I was going to join the Army. I always wanted to join the Army. I thought that everything I wanted to do was that. I went and talked to the Army guys, and they kind of blew me off. They were just kind of like, yeah. We'll talk to you as soon as you take the ASVAB, right? And I was like, I've already done that in high school. I've already got my scores. And they're all like, yeah, but you got to take it again. And, just call us back whenever you get your results and stuff. And I was kind of like, I'm trying to volunteer myself and you're trying to make it difficult for me. So that's why, I ended up going to the Navy. And of course, after I joined the Navy, coming from a primarily Marine Corps family, it was not popular. So.
No, I can understand that. I've heard that from a lot of people when it comes to what was their primary reason for joining a certain branch, right? Whether the recruiter brushed them off. I try to tell people all the time that sometimes the recruiters are like car salesmen, right? And back in the
Yeah.
days, if they met their quota,
They
they
got that
don't
bill that they
care.
got to fill, right?
Right. You got to go to the next recruiter, the one that unfortunately that guy will sell his grandma to get you into the into the military.
Yes.
Um, but no, I get that. I mean, either way, thank you for your service. You still joined. You did something.
Yes.
So now you get out of the military. When you transitioned out of the military, what was life like initially when you got out of the military? Were there any transitional problems?
It was very confusing. When I left my ship, it was like my last day on board, and they punched a hole in my ID card, and they handed me my packet, and they're like, "See ya," have a good life. And I walked off the base, and I looked back towards the entrance to the base with the guard shack and everything. And saw the razor wire and everything. And I was like, you know what? I don't belong to this world anymore, right? The world that told me what time to get up, what to wear, what to eat, and this whole structured life. And then I looked out, is it like I said in San Diego, I looked out towards the high rises and everything. And I'm like, I don't know anything about this world either. And I didn't have a bank account. I didn't have a place to live. I had no job prospects. And I'm like, at that moment, I was like, what am I going to do? Luckily, I had some friends that had, apartments and everything like that. And they allowed me to stay there for a little while until I actually kind of figured it out as to what I was going to do. But it was a very scary transition. And I remember waking up the very first day out of leaving, the military or, active duty, because I did reserves beyond that. And I woke up in the morning time and I'm like, what do I do? Where do I go? Who do I go talk to? Or, anything. It's just it was such a strange world to transition into that I was really not prepared to do. So. Oh, there you are. I lost you for a minute.
Little sound problems.
Okay, got you now.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. Well, so, that's a big thing when we're talking about transitioning out of the military, right?
Yes.
A lot of the veterans often do talk about that. We talk about life after the military and finding ourselves, right? It is a huge struggle.
It is.
When it comes to finding ourselves. I think that comes with the resources you might have at the time, right? Like your support system. I think that having a strong support system initially to help you transition, because for most of us, we get out of the military and we're on our own.
Yes.
And
well, you have certain expectations, right? So I was like my son, he was a corpsman and he got a medical discharge and he did not want to get out, but they gave him no other option. They're like, see ya, and he was a field medic to where he could actually go out on a battlefield, you're shot or whatever, and administer this first aid to you. But yet he couldn't go work at a civilian hospital because he didn't have the civilian, credentials or the education. And he was lost. He's like, he was expecting, it's like, I've had all this training. His first 4 years of being in the military was nothing but training. And then he gets out and they're like, yeah, but you don't have this or you don't have that. You don't have this certificate. You don't have this degree. We can't use you. And you're going, wait a minute. I can save somebody's life, but I can't use you on the civilian side, right? And it's like, what a blow, because you're thinking to yourself, it's like, man, I'm making a difference. And now I get out and it's like, you just don't know what to do, because it's like, you can't fit in,
And I think that's the biggest thing right there, right? You and I have had that conversation. We talk about how it doesn't matter whether you did 3 years, 4 years. I think that the longer you're in, the harder it is to break out of that, right? Because that's all you know. For most of us, I joined the military at 17. So that's all I know my whole adult life for the most part. So transitioning out of that, depending on your personality and how big of, I say the ego, some of us get out and we're told and we're led to believe that when we get out, all these jobs are lined up for you. Everything is going to be there for you. And reality hits, and no, nobody owes you anything. And now
No.
you're just, like yourself, you got out and now you're just John. I got out, I'm just Alex. And what does that mean? So it is a struggle. And I think that for some people, it's a short struggle, right? And
Right.
if they have a strong support system, they can easily fall back on that. And, thankfully, a lot of us in certain areas have the veteran community that can kind of pull you in.
Yes.
But then for others who live in small rural areas, they don't. So
No.
they're dealing with it on their own and they're just struggling. So, um,
Well,
so
if you think about this, right? In the military, you're taught to say yes. Go do this, yes, sir, or go do that, yes, 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 right? So you're in this thing that's like where you're given an order, you say yes, and I'm going to, complete this order, and then you transition out, and it's like everybody's telling you no, right? No, 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 no. And it's like you don't know how to deal with that because it's been such a part of your life. It's like, someone asks you to do something, you're like, yes, or yes, sir, or whatever. And now all of a sudden you transition out and you go to talk to people and they're like, no, everything is no, 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 no. It's a huge thing to overcome.
I agree. Very quickly, I wanted to say welcome to everyone who tuned in. Linda, we see you. Hi, Linda. Um, and for all of you guys that are tuning in, appreciate it. Michelle, I read your comment. Even being out for 12, it's still confusing. It is.
It
It
is.
is. Yeah, Linda, unfortunately, one of my cameras decided it wanted to go down. So I had to adjust fire. The show kept going. Um, but I appreciate it. But Marie says you would think the USA would have something in place. I think that's the never-ending struggle, right? I think that will always be the debate between everybody. We have the homeless veteran population. We have men and women from all walks of life, regardless of your birthright or citizenship. Anyone who raised their hand and served, right? Um, who should be taken care of and are not. They're struggling for many different reasons. They're struggling and they're falling through the cracks. You would think that there would be a system that when you transition out of the military, that they prepare you for the civilian world. They don't. When I retired, they told me, thank you for your service. Walmart is hiring. Good luck. That's it. Same thing. They took my ID card, punched a hole on it, said it's no longer useful. And that's it. And the only reason why I got lucky was by being unlucky, actually. At the time when I was living in San Antonio, I wasn't receiving my VA disability for the first 2 months. And thankfully, I found an organization out there that paid my rent and my bills for 6 months. So I got knowledge hungry and wanted to know more. What else do I not know about? But again, for others, it isn't like that. They don't have the resources. They don't have as much as maybe San Antonio does. So having something in place is always going to be the debate, right? That's like when we argue about the VA system, right? No two VA hospitals I've been to are the same.
No, not at all.
And that's just the nature of the beast, right? It all depends on where you're at and their budget, their resources.
Well, it's the same thing I've experienced here with our local VA. It's like I actually went in, and because I was in transition because I did my Persian Gulf tour, and then I went into it was a MIUW, and for the on the reserve side. So yeah, as we know in the military, it's like everything is awarded to you like a year or so later. And I was awarded different medals and everything because there's a Facebook group for my ship, and a lot of the guys were telling me like, oh yeah, you should have this, you should have that, you should be able to get a veteran's ID card, all these different things that you should be able to get. And I'm like, wait a minute, I go talk to my VA and they're like, no, that's not possible because this, that, or the other. And they're like, no, this is not right. And then they've actually um, sent me links to different websites and they're like, no, this is what you're entitled, which are .gov links. And you're kind of going, wait a minute, how does the VA not know this? I mean, it's right. It's like this should be general knowledge that they should be able to tell every single veteran that comes in there that's looking for information, whether it's benefits, whether it's disability, all these different things that you would think that it's like it should be carbon copied throughout the world, and it's not. And it's like it just depends on who's the administrator of that particular VA, and it's like it's a crapshoot. It's like you don't know exactly what you're going to get or whatever, or whether they're actually telling you the truth or they just don't know, and they're just telling you whatever. And then you're kind of like, wait a minute. And then you reach out to people and they're like, no, this is on this government website. And you're kind of like, how do they not know that? You know?
I feel that I look at the VA system like I do with different units in the military. You know, how there is one set standard, right? There's rules and regulations, right? And there's the you can add to, but you can't take away. And depending on the location, like you said, I think that when someone comes in and they're in charge now, they want to shake things up, make it their own. And that's not always a good thing. Sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. If there's a set standard, then keep it. I also think that there's that easy frustration that I think falls on both parts. One, when you easily get denied for something that you know you probably shouldn't. But then knowing the frustration of most of us veterans, that a lot of times you just get frustrated with the process that you give up, and now they don't compensate you. Now that's it. So then, like, once again, you're out on your own without the resources needed. So
well, I think that's the attitude. They want you to give up and just go away.
I agree. I agree. You know, and I've seen the same thing even with Social Security. I once took a friend, walked him to the Social Security the day he got out of the military, and he was a double amputee. And the lady smiled in his face and said, "Yeah, we can help you," and all that. And no, he got denied because
wow,
he got denied the first time. He waited a year before he went and reapplied and finally, you know, stopped being mad about it. So it's a struggle. It's not as easy as, well, this is what we need to do. No, because no two locations are the same. But you're absolutely right. There should be a system. Karen says, I was not in the military. A military spouse labeled crazy for standing up to his anger. And DV, I will never quit despite several attacks for speaking the truth. See, the VA try to keep you quiet. It's sad. You know, it's sad because of the locations of where people are at and some of the stories you hear. You know, the unfortunate story about the veterans who took their lives in the San Antonio VA. You know, that the length that he had to go through just to be heard. You know, and some people, again, like you said, Karen, not necessarily being military, but being military spouse or family, it affects everyone.
no doubt.
Whether it's financially or just getting the treatment. So
You know, it was really interesting. I was talking to my sister today, and she used to live in like Fresno, California, and she used to go into the prison systems, and she did like a physical education for them. It was part of them getting their GED, and she said probably at least at a minimum of 60% of the people that were incarcerated were veterans. And it's like you're like, wow, you know, it's like I mean, they just can't get the help that they need, and they're constantly, like you were just alluding to, they're turned away. They're like, you're denied and everything, and it's kind of like, let's face it, the for the most part, anytime the government is involved in something, they do it poorly. That's just a guarantee. I mean, a guarantee that that's going to happen. And I was so excited, like when the Obama administration came in and said, "Look, we're going to take like veterans and let them go to private doctors and stuff." And it's kind of like how insurance companies do. They negotiate rates, and you'd be able to go into a network and pick doctors and nurses or whoever, and sit there and say, "Well, I can go to this person because they accept the VA benefits." And of course, what did Congress do? They shut that down, right? And it's like, not only that, you couldn't take it across state lines. For my brother-in-law, who did, I think it was called the Sunshine Bridge, that collapsed in Tampa. He was on the body recovery thing, and it just totally PTSD, right? It just, his whole family was nothing but Coast Guard, retired and everything. He couldn't deal with it. It's like, recovering all those bodies. And he could travel 20 minutes and go to a different town, which is, he lives in Missouri, into Arkansas, but he can't. He's got to drive over 2 hours to go to a VA hospital to get the benefits that, he earned. And you're kind of like, this doesn't make sense. It's kind of like, wow, we need to do something about this. I think we should put Congress and everybody on VA benefits. Right?
Listen, I don't think we have enough time to talk about.
Yeah, I know we don't. But
That would be like a whole week series to discuss, because if only it was that easy, right? You would think
Right.
that if certain positions within our system were terms, and maybe people would look at things different, right? If it affected certain people directly as well. When I look at, because Linda mentioned that she worked for the veterans, the jail, and the veterans court as well. I've done that before. When I got into mental health, I worked for the jail because I wanted to understand how, I'm obsessed with how the mind works, but I wanted to see how the mental health side of the jail was. And most of the veterans, and you're absolutely right, I think that it is also a complex issue, because when you look at it, you have a lot of veterans who are not taken for treatment. They're not taken to be seen, right? So you see a veteran out in the streets and you're thinking he's acting erratic or being a certain way, but you don't know whether he's maybe off his meds or hasn't gotten meds. You don't know that there's something deeper. You just think that he is just being aggressive. So rather than take him to be seen and treated, they put him in the jails. And a lot of veterans, unfortunately, get lost in the system. But then there's the other side to that coin, where I think that, when we mentioned earlier, a lot of the veterans who are used to the structure of the military, unfortunately, sometimes jail feels the same, right? You're institutionalized.
Yeah.
You wake up at a certain time, they feed you, and lights out, you go back to bed. And for a lot of the veterans, especially homeless veterans, that system works for them. It's not a solution at all whatsoever. We have to do better. And
unfortunately, a lot of our police force, whether it's we have parishes here, whether it's parish wide or if it's local, they're actually not trained to deal with these people that are suffering from PTSD and everything. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of our police force in our area are prior military, but they're coming back from tours in Iraq or wherever, and they come back here and they're all like kind of jacked up and stuff, and it's like they're not trained to recognize that this is like a PTSD, something set this guy off or whatever, and how to deal with them. Instead, like you just said, it's like, well, let's just throw them in jail and let the courts deal with them. Luckily, our parish has a veterans diversion court. So where they're taking these veterans and sidetracking them from like the general population and stuff, and taking them into a veterans court and trying to get them help. Of course, it's an uphill battle because everybody thinks it's like, well, it's like they're veterans, they should know better, right? It's like, no, you don't. Unless you've served and you've been in these situations, you have no clue as to what they've been through. And it's like, why did that? What triggered them? What happened? And instead of doing that and getting the help they need for in a lot of cases, it's just like you just said. It's like, well, let's just lock them up and throw them in general population and let the court sort it out.
Now there is also the because Marie, you're absolutely right. There is no mental health help for civilians as well. You can testify to that with the situation that you're in with your loved one. I'm sorry that you're going through that. I absolutely agree. I've worked in a crisis team for a while and been in mental health for quite a while. And I will tell you that there is a huge disconnection. I think that the short answer that I like to tell people is the one thing we know is that we don't know, because it is so much easier to just arrest them and lock them up, right? Because like I said, if they're being a nuisance or something, like it's just easier. And it's not putting it all on law enforcement. No, I just think that there's a gap, right? Should there be additional training? Yes, there should be more training to recognize. There should be more mental health officers. The county I was working in at the time, we only had 2 mental health officers. And what happens when they're off or not around? So there is, and this goes back to location, right? Some places have all the resources in the world, right? All the places for the centers for battered women and children, homeless shelters and other things, but there's plenty of other places that don't. And it's the unfortunate, that when we talk about PTSD and trauma, a lot of people are easily focused on the veterans and the military. And I understand the why, right? Especially since 9/11. But this affects everyone. This is everyone problem, right? We're all suffering from something. We're all dealing with something. We're all battling something. Some of us, it's ourselves. Some of us, it's our spouse. Some, it's our children. So I think that there needs to be a better system. So when you began building your life after the military and you got into politics, prior to you getting into politics, what were some of the lessons that you learned earlier? And was it just that aha moment that you had that you decided, you know what, I don't like the system, so I'm going to insert myself and change it?
No, actually, I can remember back, well, like I said, I lived in San Diego. I stayed out there for a while after, excuse me, after I got out of the military. And I met a lot of homeless people that were veterans, and I used to it was very simple. I made peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and like a V8 and stuff. And I used to go out and hand them out. And that's like, I can't tell you how many people. I mean, this is like, I guess I was, in my young 20s and stuff, and just handing out these a simple meal to people. And they were just like so appreciative. And some of the guys had military insignia on their themselves, and I would ask them, it's like, hey, did you serve in the military? And they're like, yeah, I did, and stuff. And it's like, hey, here's a quick meal. I know it's nothing special, but it's just like saying, hey, I care, and it's like, I hope I made a difference in their lives. And I just decided it's kind of like, we've got to do something. And if I'm just one person doing something, what if we all did something? Right? And it's like, what a difference we could all make if we all got together and said, you know what, we're not going to stand for this. We're actually going to go out there and make a difference. And whether it's, on that case, it's whether it's a veteran or somebody else that's just fallen on bad times. And it's like, kind of like, hey, you know what? We care about you. And that's what really they feel like nobody cares about them. And it's like just providing them with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and a V8 or something like that. It's like they just feel like, wow, somebody actually cares. Now think about that. If we did that with everybody would do that, right?
I
And it's
call
like,
it.
like people
Go
will
ahead, I'm
say
sorry.
now it's the popular thing is to say, oh, you were in the military, thank you for your service, right? It's like, thank you for your service. Is there anything I can do for you? Because there's so many people that are struggling. That's like, if you look at them on face value, you don't know. You have no idea. And it's like, hey, you know what? As a matter of fact, I just lost my job. Do you know anybody that's hiring or whatever? But it's like, thank you for your service. Walk on. And it's like, thank you for your service. Is there anything I can do for you? That's huge.
It is. I think that I had this conversation with someone the other day where I said, why can't every day be Christmas? And what I mean by that is, so so for a long time I did not like Christmas. It just took me back to some bad times, not the best times growing up. However, I noticed, even in New York, that during the holidays, everyone's opening doors for each other after and everyone has that Christmas spirit, right? And I think that as I was getting older and when I was younger, I was a little bitter about it. Like, I don't like Christmas because it's fake. But as I got older, I realized that's what I don't like about it. Why can't we be that way or all year round, right? Why
Right.
can't we be kind to other people? Like, it costs you nothing. There is absolutely no reason why you have to tear someone else down just to build yourself up, right? Like, I don't see the point in it. And I get it. A lot of people like to say that, well, hurt people hurt people. Not necessarily. A lot of hurt people treat people even better than they treat themselves because they don't want them to have to suffer or deal with what they did.
Yeah,
So
you're right.
I think that it costs nothing to be kind. Doing stuff like that. Imagine that, if there were at the time when you did that, even 10 other John handing out sandwiches and doing stuff like that. You see places where I saw not too long ago someone set up a table and they were just feeding the homeless, and they came and gave them a fine for feeding the homeless.
Yeah. It's crazy, right?
It
You're
is.
like, what?
Mhm. It is. So it's a lot. So
Well, a lot of people just want to be seen. They want to be seen as a human being, as an individual, and for you to be able to sit there and say, you know what, I see you, I recognize you, you're another human, you're just like me. You maybe fallen on bad times or whatever, but guess what? I see you, and I recognize you as another human being, and it's like a lot of that just goes a long way.
it does. It does. And not everything needs to be a show or presentation,
No.
right? Like, I've seen people do that too. Like, they'll hand a homeless person something to eat and they're recording it. And it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
like
that's
if you know how that might make that person feel, and now they're in a position where they need it, so they're going to take it. But now you just made them feel like they were lesser.
right.
So it really costs nothing to be kind to people and help each other out. I don't think that I think that at the end of the day, something I like to say is, I don't necessarily care what's happening above my pay grade.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, is how we treat our neighbors and everyone down here. That's going to matter at the end of the day, because that's going to constantly change, right? Leadership at the top is constantly going to rotate, and they're going to come in and they're going to shake things up, and it's going to be good, it's going to be bad. But at the end of the day, we're the ones living with each other. So we have to take care of each other. Whether you're, being a veteran, are we held to higher standards? We are, to some degree, and I understand the why. Um, but just like yourself, being in the position you're in, we're all human and we're all battling something. And I think that that's something that people also forget. So, like, for yourself, being a councilman and now, running for mayor,
Mhm.
So being in the leadership position that you're in now, um, what do you think are some of the things that people underestimate about leaders that like you carry behind the scenes?
Well, I think one of the main things is like, kind of like one of my slogans or whatever. It's not really even a slogan. It's just that, I want the job. I don't care about the position. Because first off, if you're, and there's a lot of this out there, if you're doing this to like have a title, or you're doing this for some type of, self gratification, you're doing it for the wrong reason, and you should not be doing it. You should be doing this as a selfless thing, just like when we join the military. It's like you're doing this because of a sense of serving and serving the people and serving the public, because you know what? You want to make a difference. And if you're doing it for yourself, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And it's like, it's so gratifying to be able to sit there and help somebody. It could be something simple like, oh, my ditch is clogged and the water's backing up in my yard. It's like, oh, hey, let me call Public Works and get them over to come take care of that. It's like having those connections. But the thing I think that a lot of people miss in politics and stuff is like, first off, like I said, it should never be about you, ever. And it's like being able to have those connections, to be able to sit there and make a difference in everybody's life. I don't care whether you're the poorest man in the city or the richest man in the city and stuff. It's being able to go out there and sit there and say, you know what? I made a difference for them today. And that to me is huge. It's like that is the gratifying part about this. And it's kind of like the same reason why I joined the military, because it was like, I wanted to serve my country. I was proud. It's like, hey, you know what? I want to sit there and make sure that all the blanket of freedom that we all sleep under is protected while I'm out there doing this. And it's the same thing with the being in politics and stuff. I see so many times there's like these underhanded deals, or there's this or that goes on and stuff. And I'm like, that will never happen underneath my watch. Never. And I've had people even come to me and say, look, I want to give you a campaign contribution. And I'll tell them, it's like, well, if you're expecting anything in exchange for that, then don't give me a campaign contribution, because I'll tell you right now, I'm not that guy, nor will I ever do that for you.
I think that, what you just mentioned as well. I see that a lot in the mental health world, how things have changed. So I used to work for a mental health clinic, and I did that for a while. And the one thing I noticed is that things kind of slowly shifted in some places, and it happens too often, right? Everyone's so quick to want to either diagnose or medicate someone, right? Especially children. And I noticed
huge.
And I noticed that in the beginning, when I was working for some of these places, why we are being catered by the pharmaceutical reps. They're catering lunches and all this stuff, and it's because, just like in politics, they're pushing their agenda, they're pushing their meds. Like, hey, if you have anyone with these symptoms, give them this, and this is what we're going to do. And you start noticing that, and when I noticed that kind of conflicted with my moral compass, I just couldn't do it anymore. So I walked away from that. But you see that in a lot of places, in nonprofit organizations as well, whether it's nonprofit organizations for veterans or just in general. I say the same thing. It should never be about you. It should always be about the people you're serving and the mission, right? The moment you make it about you, you've already lost.
Yeah, you've lost. That's it. It's over. And it's like, think about this. It's like, most people in the business world, they go out to lunch every single day, right? And, let's face it, today it's like, you're looking $20 a lunch, right? At least, right? And, all this other stuff's going on. But you know what? How about if you made yourself a sandwich at your house and gave that $20 towards like an organization that's dealing with mental health? It's like, that would be huge, but it has become this me society. It's all about me and my wants and what makes me feel good. And it's like, also it's like with you know, let's face it, it's like we're supposed to be consumers, right? If you're if you consume, you're going to be happy. The more you buy, the happier you're going to be. And it's like, really, does that actually make you happy? No, it does not. But helping people, does that make you happy? Absolutely, it does. And I
I
think
agree.
people have been conditioned to think that it's like, the more I have, the more toys, the boat, and everything like that. That's going to make me happy, and it doesn't. It does it first, but then it fades. But actually going out there and helping a human being, because they're down on their luck, I mean, that lasts a lifetime.
I agree. So with you being in the position that you're in now, right, that um, you can influence change.
Mhm.
You now have the capability to make certain things happen, right? And I know I say certain things because
Yeah.
there's certain limits, right?
Yeah.
But what are some of the things that you're seeing in your community right now, or just in general, like in our country as a whole, not just within the veteran population, but just as a whole, that people are not talking about enough when it comes to like mental health?
So I see a lot of that, especially like we have a certain area of Covington that's less fortunate, right? And it's kind of like, you know what? As long as they kind of stay over there, we're good with that. And then you're kind of like, well, wait a minute. They live in substandard housing. They live with slumlords and other things like that. And it's like these people, the people in the more affluent areas, have no clue. They just think that's kind of like everybody lives like they do. And I see that happening and stuff. And so I've been trying to um, kind of fix that, as you might say. And it's like nothing but pushback. I mean, it's just like extreme pushback about that. And I see things like that are like the inequalities. I see things in our public schools that are inequalities. Covington is kind of considered, like the cow town, or the whatever, because there's a lot of rural people that come to our schools. But then it's like another city over, they get a brand new computer lab. Oh, they did all this technology, and it's like at our school we get a new bell for a tower, and you're kind of like, wait a minute, how is that benefiting the children, right? So I see those inequalities and stuff, and it's like if somebody's not willing to step up and say, no, no, I'm sorry, this is not fair. That we want the same thing that one city over is getting. We think that the same opportunities and everything should be towards our children, and that are that can't afford to send their kids to private school or whatever. And I think that needs to be addressed, because it's like I do a lot of work with the Hope House here. It's a children's advocacy center, and it's like you see the systemic things of like what happens if people don't receive you know treatment slash help or whatever. It's like a snowball effect, right? That they're less likely to graduate from school. They're more likely to have problems. They're more likely to run into problems with the police and everything, and more likely to abuse drugs. And not only that, they're likely to carry that over to the next generation. And it's kind of like if we're not investing in our children and everything that are in our own community, we're doing a disservice. And it's like it's going to continue. And it's like we all want the utopia, right? But it like I saw one of the comments is it takes a village, right? And it does. And that's about making people aware of like kind of like, hey, look, here's a street that's been a rock road for 3 years, but yet we just overlaid your street in a very affluent area, and it's kind of like that's not fair, you know. And when you tell people that, they're like, "Wait, what? Are you kidding me?" Not only that, even like with our police force were one of the lowest paid police forces in our entire parish or county. And so I said, you know what, we need to do something about this. So I called for a special session with the council, And what we did is we pulled water bills from different people, businesses versus, John Q. Citizen and stuff. We pulled a variety of them. And there was like different amounts that were suggested. And we looked at like the average citizen, we're looking at like a 60% increase. But these massive users that were like, hotels and things like, like that, it was like a 2% increase. And you're kind of like, no, we can't do that. But you know what? We need to pay our police because there's our police officers were making $24,000 a year. And then when you take out benefits, it's even less, right? And it's kind of like, how can you have a community with essential people that are vital to the community? And it's like, just turn a blind eye to them. It's like, well,
I think that it's easy in most places to turn it into, and this is the problem, right? It's the same thing that I noticed with like the legal system, right? Or even campaigning. Those days where people can agree to disagree respectfully are over. The campaign is now a smear campaign, just like sometimes, the justice system. I noticed, when I worked at the crisis team, the town that I was living in here in Texas, you don't see any of that. You don't see homeless. You don't see anyone on drugs out in the street. And it's a huge tourist town. And people assume this is super safe. No, you're just not behind the curtain seeing what's actually happening underneath the bridge. And, and that's a problem that unfortunately, for a lot of people, if they don't see it, then, our attention span is very short.
Yeah, it's like as long as they're not in my neighborhood, then
right.
That's okay. But that you brought up a really good point too. Is just that like when people don't see it, right? So it's about bringing awareness, right? So my thing is that it's like you have to be fair, even though it's like an affluent neighborhood versus an impoverished neighborhood. You kind of have to equally distribute funds, that you collect from taxes and stuff, because you can't sit there and say, well, we're only going to focus on you, but you have problems too, and we're not going to address your problems, right? So you kind of have to look at a blanket thing and saying, okay, look, there's problems everywhere. What are the primary problems and what needs the most attention? But you can't sit there and say, well, this is more affluent or whatever, and we're going to give you all the attention and we're just going to ignore you. You can't do that. It doesn't work, and I've seen a lot of things in the city that could be improved, especially as far as people educating them. And because like what I referred to earlier about this rock road that had been like that for 3 years, we're a 213-year-old city, so we have tons of problems. Terracotta pipes, they're collapsing and whatever. We're addressing that, and our current mayor has done a great job as far as addressing that, but there's more that needs to be done. And the problem with it is that when you tell people, it's like they're like, oh, I would like this done. I'd like more improvements done in my area. And you're kind of like, here's a picture of what these people are dealing with. And they're like, oh my God, I didn't know that. And they're so willing to sit there and say, well, by all means, take care of that first, right? And it's like that's my point is that we're all together. It's like people think that just because there's social or economical classes and stuff like that, but you know what? At the end of the day, we're all humans and we're all one community. And it's like, let's make our community great for everybody.
So with all that, because that's a huge weight, right? And you're taking on different roles, you're wearing multiple hats, and now you're in the process of running for another position that's going to add more responsibility. So how do you balance all that?
Well, luckily I have a very supportive wife that she stands behind me and everything that I do. The thing is like, you just have to look out there and say, you know what, this is right. This is what needs to be done. Right. And it doesn't matter what the circumstances are. It's like, this is what is right. And if you focus on that, it's actually pretty easy. It's kind of like, this needs to be done. And like you alluded to, like the mudslinging and the things, it's like, oh, Alex voted against armor for our troops. Well, yeah, you did, because it was less than 1% of the bill. The rest of it went to some pork project. And there's people out there now and these days, especially with AI coming out, right? I mean, that's the scary stuff, because they can put your head on somebody else, and it's like everybody's like, "Oh, I saw that video of you," and you're like, "Well, no, that wasn't me." They're like, "No, I saw that video of you," and it's like there's people out there that want to do this for self gratification, and what they're going to do is they're going to sling as much mud as they can at you to try to get you to lose, and it could be false, it's lies and everything else. And what it is because if you as a candidate sit there and address that over and over, then people tend to think that A, you're guilty, and B, you don't get your word out.
So,
So
my,
so
my
if you do that all the time, then it's kind of like you're kind of losing the battle, right? They've won. They've done exactly what they wanted. Now let's look at it like legally. If you were to find that person that was making these fake Facebook accounts and making all these fake accusations against you, well, one, the election's over, right? And you may have won or you may have lost or whatever. And if you find that person, it's a misdemeanor. It's nothing more than a traffic ticket. And now you've spent $20,000 to $30,000 hiring forensic, people to go in and search and find these people, and they don't care. They really don't care. And I was talking to my wife about this, and it's like, if you can remember back in the day, it used to be like, you know what, this person here, they're the best person for the job. It didn't really matter, what side they were on or whatever. You would say, you know what, this person is the best person for the job. And then it turned into this, well, they're the lesser of two evils, right?
So my question to that, with politics aside, when we're talking about yourself, John the man, and with all this going on, and the mental health epidemic, everything that's happening now, what would you say to other men who are struggling, who don't open up, who are dealing with this stuff on their own, right? Like, for those who may not have a strong support system like yourself, what would you advise for them?
My advice to them is that there are different organizations, faith-based organizations and everything out there. There is somebody out there that is willing to listen, and you need to go out and seek that out, because it's like, let's say, like, if you're going to go for therapy, right? You might go to this one counselor and it's like, no way, that man or woman that they're a quack. I don't want anything to do with them. But you don't give up, right? That's the main thing, is don't give up. And it's like, if you want help, seek help. And there's other things that are out there. As not only that, it's like being a councilman or whatever. There's a community leaders that if you go out to one of them and say, hey, look, I've dealt with this before. It's like, I've had people call me and say, look, I got a friend or whatever that needs like this type of help. And I went through a class called Leadership St. Tammany, and they brought us around to different organizations. Most of them are faith-based, because that seems to be like, they do it way better than the government does. And they're like, where do I turn? Who do I refer these people to? So I would encourage people to get involved in these things. Go out into your community and see what's out there, see what's available, because eventually, sooner or later, you're going to find somebody that needs some type of help. And if you should be able to direct them to this process for them to get help, because otherwise, if you just turn a blind eye to them and you walk by them and you pay no attention to this person and stuff, the guy that's living underneath the bridge, or the guy that's sitting there on on his bike and he's got his bags on the next side of him, and it's like, I make a point to say, hey, how you doing? Wave at him and stuff. And it's like, I've had people ask me, it's like, hey man, I'm hungry. Can you give me something to eat? I was like, yeah. It's like, do you need help? And they're like, yeah. It's like, here's a number of this organization that can actually help you.
I think that is amazing, and I think that we should all use some of that.
We
John,
all
I want to thank you for being here, for sharing your perspective tonight. Good luck on,
thank you.
the candidacy. If I can vote for you, I would. To everyone watching, if you've been carrying something heavy, you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah.
People aren't always as okay as they look, and strength doesn't mean, staying silent. So reach out. Thank you for joining us, everyone.
And like veteran suicide, I just want to throw this in really quick. Veteran suicide is at an all-time high. These people that need help and stuff like that, they don't know where to go to get help. So educate yourself. So when you see somebody like that, you can tell them, contact this number to get you some help.
Absolutely. Everyone, thank you for coming out. You have a good night.
Good night.